Welcome everybody. Tonight we're going to talk about whitewater gold, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that in a second. So, when we get out and we get ready to go find gold, one of the first things we want to know about is, where's the gold? The first things you can do to figure that out is figure out what water is doing, okay? What it did, what it's doing, where the gold is getting pushed. We'll talk about that in a second as well. But for tonight, we're going to really have something important. I have some breaking news developing that sort of started last week, but it really hit a peak yesterday. So, important stuff for gold prospectors. So stay tuned, keep watching, share with your friends, as well as joining and subscribing to my channel, Prospector Jess, on YouTube. Those three things, that's what you got for a chore tonight, okay? Make sure you're getting yourself tuned in to everything we've got to offer. So right now, we're looking at gold, and we're looking at water, and we're looking at how all that stuff works together. And tonight we're going to talk about a kind of an unusual mechanism. I'll explain in a second here what I mean by that, what a mechanism is, and all that kind of good stuff. But the main thing is that you understand this is yet another one of those really important angles, really important things or causes, okay, for gold to move and deposit and hide and concentrate. And if you understand the fundamentals of this cause, it can lead you to some pretty serious gold finds next spring, okay, and summer, okay? But it's important to understand what the mechanism is. That's why I focus so much on why things work the way they do, and what it means to you and how to use that mechanism to benefit yourself in finding more gold. So let's take a look at whitewater gold. So here's the deal. When you're looking for gold, you're looking for rocks and minerals that bear gold, as well as gold that's free milling. It's been torn free from the lode or other depositing materials and has made itself available in the form of various deposits of, the good stuff. Some shiny, of various sizes and natures. And the point being that as you discover these things, they tell you hints and so forth, and that's why you want to mark them on top and make sure you have all your information about where you found them, okay? And then the objective is to kind of put that together into a map. But to start with, what we want to talk about tonight isn't so much the gold. The gold is important, but there's a why behind the gold that I want to kind of focus on just for a moment. And that why is really important, and it's something I always watch for kind of on an annual basis. Now here's the deal. Your mileage will vary based on where you live, and your mileage will vary based on the season of where you live. How about that? Okay, so right now we're experiencing something that we call winter, and it's on full force. It doesn't always happen every year. Guess what? That's just the way it is. No matter what people have said about global warming and so forth, I've seen variations. I've seen super wet and chilly Christmases here in Southern California, and I've seen sunshine and summer weather. I've seen fires in the middle of winter, okay? Happened a couple years ago on my birthday, December 9th. Hey, how about that? So it happens to be one of those factors that you keep your eyes peeled for. Now, one of the factors that you look for is a white water gold. Now, white water has kind of two implications here. One is, whitewater normally refers to rapids and floods and that kind of thing. Yes, that's right. Whitewater moves gold. That's the whole point. When water velocity gets beyond a certain tipping point, larger and larger gold will move, and boulders and cobbles. And pretty soon we get to a point where it's actually just torrents of water. That'll move any kind of gold you got. And that's the kind of thing we want to keep our eyes peeled for when we're looking for gold. Those kinds of situations, whether they've happened yet or not, that's what we're going to talk about here in a second. Whether they've happened or not. Why would it be that we can predict the future? That's a good question. So here's the deal. White water, also the second terminology is when water freezes, okay, and it forms in flakes and so forth, it has a reflective property. We call it albedo. It's a scientific term. It simply means how much of the sun's rays reflect off of it. And that can cause, in turn, some serious, interesting results. Global cooling, anyone? Yes, that's what the ice ages were. Albedo increase. How soon can that happen? It can happen in a season. Boom, like that. Okay, and what does that mean? Well, it means snowpack, glaciers. water increases in the watershed. So when the water increases in the watershed, does that mean you've got gold moving? Not if its albedo increases, not if it's ice, because ice doesn't flow down the river unless it's a glacier, and that's going to be kind of slow. It will move serious amounts of gold, and it will move at a long, long distance, but that's not what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about water moving gold. And of course, snow isn't water, or is it? You see, snow is water. It's water deposited to the tune of about 6 inches of snow equals 1 inch of water flow. Wait a minute. So if I get 5 or 6 inches or 10 inches of rain, yow, okay? So a couple feet of snow can equal a pretty serious flood, depending on how fast that water comes down. And that's what we're going to talk about. So let's take a look at what I mean. Go to the Choctaw. So essentially, as we go down this kind of tiered approach of looking at snow and water flow and all that kind of good stuff, I'm going to use blue for water, okay? So step one, we basically have our good friend, and let me get this right. Okay, so I have whitewater gold, WWG. So whitewater gold, we've talked about it, it's solid snow. Or a better term for it is snowpack, okay? So we're stacking up layers and layers of water in the form of a solid material, and it's building this layered structure we call snowpack. Now that layered structure can have a couple of different properties. One is that it can be at super freezing temperatures and come down, basically through the atmosphere in such a way that it's super dry. It's basically ice that's super ice, okay? There's no water content in there whatsoever. That's called dry snow, okay? And it's the fluffy stuff that skiers love, okay? Because it stays kind of fluffy and it's not that dense. On the other hand, on the West Coast, we start getting some of these atmospheric rivers. They can come from the north, in which case they produce dry snow, or they can come from the south, like we've had recently. Now, in fact, what we had in this last week was an interesting atmospheric river trend. We had stuff coming in from the north, bringing dry snowpack, and we had stuff over Christmas, yesterday, that came in and shot a bunch of wet snow over the same area. So now we got layers of dry and wet stacking on top of each other. When that wet snow comes down, it's denser. It drops in and compresses in, but it's also right on the hairy edge of melting. Okay, so it has some interesting properties. Now, what makes water move out of snow? Melting. Okay, so just keep your eyes out on that. So number 2 here is this guy in turn causes an event that can lead to, speed. Okay, so 2, speed of water. Okay. Now, why is that? Well, because depending upon the water flow, and the water flow is really what moves the gold, the speed, okay? So depending upon that, well, that leads to another thing that happens, and that is flow and drop. So flow, okay? Or put another way is flow rate, okay? So that's 3. That would be essentially, we'll call it cubic feet per second. Or cubic meters per second, okay? But we're talking about a volume of water per second moving, okay? And some smaller streams, and this is one of the things you got to tune, okay? Some smaller streams can take, tens of cubic feet per second before they go into flood stage. They start going out of control and ripping loose the banks and jumping over the banks and going into the neighborhoods. And other ones can take, millions of cubic feet per second. Mississippi, okay? Both cases, we can get flooding, okay? And when you get flooding, what it's doing is ripping the banks up. When the banks get ripped, the gold will move. When the banks get ripped, the gold must move. When the bottom gets ripped, the gold must move. When that stuff carves into the thing to bedrock, that's why I always say downhill, downstream, down to bedrock. When it carves to bedrock, the gold has to move, okay? So what we're talking about here is when we get enough volume flowing, we're going to have floods and flow, okay? Well, what leads to that, okay? So we're going causally. Why is this? Every time I'm asking why does speed happen? Because flow increases. Why does flow happen? Because essentially you've got some kind of drop or a flood. Okay, and in this case we've got a little bit of both. Boy, I could use a pen. I'm doing this with my mouse. And so what causes flood? Why does that happen? So that's number 4 cause. Well, floods in this case are caused by melt. I could say it's caused by water flow, which is caused by rain and melt, and that would be true too. So let's just say it's melt or flood, or a combination of those two. So flood is caused by, not flood, but by rain or by snowmelt. Or rain can cause snowmelt. We'll talk about that in a second. And so what I wanted to point out is, ultimately, this is the thing that hasn't happened yet. That's how you predict the future, okay? But we do know that it can cause massive flooding because of this huge amount of snow, okay? So what would drive gold? Snow, ultimately melting, and some rain that might go along with it, which might actually cause the snow to melt. See how that works? So we're just kind of going with the flow, okay, and looking at how all this works. Now, what does that mean to you? Well, it means the following. Here's the breaking news for the day. As of December 26th, and this is California, but this kind of thing you can go look up in your local area, okay? It varies, your mileage varies, as I said earlier. So in California right now, we have this picture developing, okay? This is essentially the California Data Exchange Center, a big name for a bunch of bureaucrats that collect data, okay? So anyway, what I want to call your attention to is this map. And closely, I want to call your attention to what the map is saying. Watch part 2 of Whitewater Gold to find out what's happening next.